Hi, and welcome to the Writing Biz, where we take care of the business of writing. This week, we're offering you advice, tools, and resources that can help you use social media more effectively. This is the beginning of a series that will cover the different types of social media that you can use in your business. Today, I'm joined by Frances Caballo of the blog Social Media Just for Writers. Welcome, Frances. Could you tell us more about yourself and how you help writers learn about social media?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So as I was telling you earlier, I had been a reporter, and then I worked in communications for a national nonprofit. And then as social media developed, it was a natural step for me to step into. And since then, I've written a couple books, Social Media Just for Writers, and then most recently I published Avoid Social Media Time Suck, a blueprint for writers to create online buzz for their books and still have time to write. And so in this book, I talk about a four-step system that you can follow, and hopefully, if you follow that and get it down, you can spend half an hour to 45 minutes, at most an hour a day, in two half-hour increments on your social media.
See, that's what we were discussing in the green room. Before you even had told me about that, I had mentioned that I don't see any reason that unless you're doing social media for a living that you can't power your business in social media within an hour a day. And I mean, of course, there's going to be some days you sit down and it takes longer because you have more to do. But basically, if you can make the commitment an hour a day and you schedule it, you're going to see a big difference in your business.
Oh, absolutely. You need to have a presence on social media. And one thing that I stress in the book is that we can't use social media to broadcast, simply to broadcast our messages. Television is broadcast media, radio is broadcast media. We don't have any control over when the music stops on the radio and the ads begin. On social media, you don't want to be this voice that is always broadcasting your message. The main point of social media is to be social, and the way that we're social is by we share content, we ask people how they're doing, we respond to their questions, we thank them for their retweets, we share content on Facebook, we like content. We are social beings, and we're social beings on social media. Otherwise, we're just like a boob tube.
I absolutely agree with you. And you know, it's funny too. There was I just wanted to bring this up real quick. I get this a lot on Twitter, to where somebody will put out like 6 or 7 tweets all at once. So there's this big block of all their tweets. You know, I don't ever read those because I'm not going to read every single one. I almost always skip that block. Isn't that? I don't know if that's me or if that's more people do that. But to me, it's just broadcasting. It's not an intuitive relationship with the media.
Exactly. Sometimes what I've done is when new users on Twitter follow me, and I'll navigate to their profile, and if all I see is a list of their tweets about their information, and they're not retweeting, and they're not sharing, they're not engaging, then I don't follow them back.
I do the same exact thing too, and also incomplete profiles. If I don't know where you're from and who you are, I'm not going to follow you on any social media, because I'm very careful about who is in my stream, because I really am interested in what people say. So I'm protective about that. So if you're not giving me the information I need to decide if I want you as a friend, and I mean as a friend, somebody I want to have a relationship with, I'm not going to click follow on your profile.
That's a really good point. I don't follow back anyone who doesn't have a profile image. In the old days, up until a few months ago, a nice background image also, but that's kind of gone by the wayside. So if you don't have, if all you have is the egghead and there isn't much about you, or if instead of a short bio, it's a quote, then I'm not probably going to follow you back. I have to see that you're a writer, or you're a blogger, you're into social media, you have content to share, content that I would want to share, and you're someone I would want to interact with.
No, I absolutely agree with you. You have to be really careful about that. So let's say you get up in the morning, and what process could somebody go through? What tools could they use to sit down and get their social media ready for the day?
Right. So I'll tell you what I do. The number one thing I do on Twitter is I create lists. It's very simple to do on Twitter, and then as I encounter new users and I think that they have valuable information that I want to keep in touch with them in the future, I create a list and I include them on it. So I have lists for news, I have lists for social media, I have lists for writing and publishing, I have, I don't know, 7 or 8 lists. But there are certain lists, social media and writing and publishing, that are sort of my go-to lists in the mornings. And I go to those lists and I look at the people that I'm targeting that I know that typically have good content, you know, like Joel Friedlander, Nina Amir, and I look what they're tweeting that day. So I sort of create this list to sort of make my curation real simple. The other thing I do is I go to a website, like I use alltop.com, and alltop.com will have on the right side the letters A to Z, and I'll hit either P for publishing or S for social media marketing, or W for writing. And then I will look at the top posts of the day and see if there's anything there that I want to share. Also, I use an application called Sway, S-W-A-Y-Y.
Oh, I love Sway. I love Sway.
Yeah, it's fabulous. And you tell Sway what your topics are, what your key topics are, what your niche is, whether you're writing fiction, nonfiction, if it's genre, if it's literary, if it's about mountain hiking, if it's about social media. So you tell them what your topics are, and they will provide you with the top articles in your tribe for the day. And then you can sort through them, and you can, from Sway, post to Twitter and Facebook. And if you're posting on Twitter, you have the option of posting now, posting an hour from now, 2 hours from now, 3 hours from now, 5 hours from now. And so it just makes the content curation easy. Another great application, which is fairly new, is called Daily. Have you heard of that, Laura?
I have not used that one. I have heard about it, but I have not used it.
It's a brand new one from Buffer, and Buffer is a scheduling application for Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and I think Google Plus if you have a paid version. And so they now have an application called Daily, and you can download it on your iPhone or Android or tablet. And they actually manually review articles, and they will list the top articles of the day, and you can just swipe on your phone. And if you like one, you just agree that you want to use that one. It automatically goes into your Buffer. So the Buffer app has a preset schedule. You don't have to think about what time of day. It just automatically.
So it's like a collection of RSS feeds.
Yes, and that will just automatically go out. And they have really, really good information. So
I'm gonna have to check into that.
Yeah, Daily is probably the easiest application I've found for content curation. And then if you're interested in looking for information and also possibly publishing a weekly or monthly newsletter, magazine, Scoop It and Paperly are good applications. I like to use Scoop It. I just found that easy to use. And so I will go to Scoop It, I will name my topic, I will give them the keywords, and then each time I go to the application, they suggest 100 articles that are out. And I decide which ones I like, which ones I don't, and I have a new magazine, and then I publish the link on Twitter or Facebook or wherever, and people get all this information. And then I know that on Scoop It, once a month, I can also integrate MailChimp with Scoop It, and I have a newsletter. So it's kind of really easy.
Wow, that's it's so funny, those little tools, and most of them are free. They are so helpful. They save me so much time.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some things I pay for because I do use social media as a business. I mean, I have clients that I handle, so I do use a paid version of Hootsuite. But for a long time, I used the free version, and it was very powerful for just my use. I didn't see any reason to have the paid version until I got into the situation that I'm in now. But the one thing that it is to take your time and schedule out things during the day. Don't just throw everything out there at 9 o'clock in the morning. Spread it out during the day so you can reach as many audiences that in your niche that you can reach.
Right. Yeah. One other application is from the people who created Twyla, and it's called Brand Builder. Twyla came out as more of a tweet preservation app, I think, and it would create what would appear to be either a magazine or a website with a categorized by the types of content that you tweet. And so I think in order to monetize what they were doing, they created out of Twyla a new application called Brand Builder. And so what you do is you take this brand building assessment, which is free, and then Twyla determines what the content is, what type of content you most want to post on social media. And then each morning you will go to Brand Builder, look at your scorecard to see what you're deficient in, and then Twyla Brand Builder will suggest content to tweet. And they have this feature called a power tweet, which they think is will increase your retweet substantially. So that's it's an application I was using, and what I saw was that my retweets just went up astronomically. But then I found after about 3 or 4 months that I wasn't finding the content that I really needed, and so I stopped it. And I have seen then I saw the tweets go down. But then I remembered what my advice is to people, which is to always tweet images also. And so I've been posting images twice a day, and my tweets have gone back up. My retweets have gone back up.
Yeah, so, images is very important in any social media.
Yeah. So Brand Builder is good. Oh, sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Brand Builder is a fun app, but it's $29 a month. And I was paying that, and I liked it, but then I just thought I would try something else, and I've been using Sway and Daily instead.
Yeah, which are both free, so that's nice.
Both free, yeah. That's great.
Yeah, and that's one thing about social media is such a powerful, powerful, powerful part of your business, and most of it is free. Very little do you have to pay for, unless you're using it on a professional basis, and by that I mean representing other people's social media accounts. I just don't understand the mindset of not using it. Well, I don't want to waste my time on social media. If you do it right and you do it effectively, you're not going to waste your time. If you spend that 1 hour a day sitting down, taking care of your social media needs, your business is going to grow. It just exponentially it will. Your authority is going to grow. People are going to believe from you. If as a writer, people will buy your books from you if they believe in what you're doing. So it's extremely powerful. And if you do it right, if you think of it instead of, like we were talking, Francis, instead of thinking about it as part of your job, think about it as you're out there making friends and building relationships that are not only going to help you professionally, but also give you something personally. Either you're going to learn from them or enjoy their company, but use it as you're building a relationship inside of your business. You're going to enjoy your work much better if you think about it that way.
Right, and it's amazing the relationships that you will have. Like through Twitter, I met a man named Tony Riches, and he's from Wales. And when I published my first book, he said, why don't you write a post for my blog during NaNoWriMo, because I'm going to be busy. And so I did, and I wrote another post when my second book came out. And my books sell in the UK every month, and I think it's largely because of his blog. I met someone in Malaysia, and she is really good at Facebook, and she promoted me on her Facebook page. And then recently I met another man from Wales who's an editor of a magazine there, and he asked me to write 2 pieces for their magazine. And so one's running in August and one is running in September or October. And I mean, those are just a couple of examples of what happens with social media. You make connections with people all over the world, and your influence and your books can sell all over the world.
And the other thing is, it's a less painful way of doing it than we used to have to do it. In other words, to meet influencers, we had to go to all the conferences. We had to get their attention. We had to put ourselves in a position to where we could speak to them. And very rarely do you have the time to get to know them. That's not true on social media. I have personal relationships with people I probably would never have been able to build a relationship with outside of social media. And if you're doing it, like you said, with a list on Twitter to where you're following people that are influential in what you're trying to do, let's say if your book is on Italian cooking, so you're following other cooks that specialize in Italian cooking, things that have to do with Italy that fit into what your book's about, and also targeting your audience at the same time, you have built an audience that is very worthwhile to what you're doing. And you could do that, the list, I'm sure you're aware, on Google Plus too, they have those circles, and you can do the same thing. And I'm all for separating your social media into different circles, because some days you're going to be have more information available to you that might fit into one area of what you're working on better than another. So it's nice to have it separated out where you don't have to hit everybody with everything.
There are circles in Google Plus, lists on Twitter. On LinkedIn, they were calling them tags for a while, but it's basically lists for your contacts. And then on your Facebook profile, you can also create lists so that if you want to post a message that's personal to your family, then you only want to post it so that your family can see it. And if you post something that's more public, then you can post it so that anybody can see it. But lists are really important on social media, I think.
Yeah, and if you take the time to get organized in that, because I don't know what I would do without my Twitter list, but if you take the time to get organized and think about things like that and learn how to use the social medias correctly, all the little tools that they have, and the way that they are best used, you're going to save yourself a lot of time in the long run and also be a lot more effective. I also want to mention, too, we had mentioned about how to curate content. We did mention that very briefly. Because like I said, in an hour's time, it's hard to get in all the information. But also, when we're talking about curation, I don't mean just to pull other people's articles and throw them up somewhere with your name on it on your account. You have to have some type of relationship to that piece of content. So write your opinion of it, or maybe use it as part of a source for another piece of content that you're doing, but somehow integrate it into something. Don't make sure you always thank the person who came up with the content, the author of the content, the person who posted it that maybe is not the author, but the in-between person, but really pay attention to those kind of things. And first of all, that's the etiquette of social media. But second of all, that also puts you in a place to where the people who are creating that content start to recognize you as somebody who's interested in their content. And quite possibly, if they start following you, maybe they'll find that you have as much of a value to them as you have to them, they have to you. Would you think that's?
Oh, absolutely. For example, today Jason Matthews wrote a post for Joel Friedlander's blog, and I'm including it in my Friday roundup of the week's best posts. And so I wrote very clearly, written by Jason Matthews for Joel Friedlander's The Book Designer blog. I always say that Twitter is a social media network that Miss Manners would like, because you always credit not only where the content came from, but how you found the content. So let's say that Peg Fitzpatrick wrote a post and I really like it, but I found it because Jane Friedman tweeted it. So I would, in my tweet, I would note that by Peg Fitzpatrick via Jane Friedman. So you always attribute who wrote it, how you found it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, people think that it's just a waste of time to do that. It's not. First of all, you're not making people mad. But second of all, there really is a reason that you do that. I mean, it's a dynamic reason that's going to help you build your following and your growth on social media.
Absolutely.
Now, I want to kind of give some really, really hardcore tips on how to set, like I'd mentioned earlier, how to set up a personal sharing platform in a system. What can we do? Tell people about how this. I'm going to tell you how I do mine first, and then you can tell me what I'm doing wrong or right, or how you do it. We'll carry on that discussion. When I get up in the morning, first I make my coffee, and then I sit down and I start curating the content I'm interested in for that day. So I will look at all the different, I use RSS feeds like Feedly. I use Sway, which I think is amazing. I get a lot of content out of Mashable. I just try to look for things that, depending on who I'm doing it for, if I'm doing it for a business, whatever their business is, centered around their message. If for myself, I do it on social media and writing, but then I have different accounts too. So I have my account that deals with writing and publishing, which is the writing biz, and then I have Good Inklings, which is my business. So I separate those two, and I find pieces that work well into what I'm trying to do, and then I put those out, some of them. Some of them I'll hold back because maybe I've decided to do a whole blog post on whatever that special piece is. And I'll do the blog post, and I'll use that as a source, and yada, yada, yada. I mean, it's a little more fluid than I'm making it sound, but it really does not take me all day to do this. It takes me, to do my business, what I do first thing in the morning, probably takes me a half an hour if I don't do a blog post, and an hour to an hour and a half if I do a blog post. And that's just because of the way I do. When I do a blog post, I don't just do the post. I also rewrite it again for other platforms. So I do a very complicated method of it. But what would you suggest that I could do better, or what that you found has really worked for you?
Do you write your blog post every day?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay.
I probably do probably three every week, maybe 4 some weeks.
Yeah. So like I said earlier, I use my Twitter list and Alltop and Sway and Daily, and I check the content. Like if I see Jane Friedman tweeting something, it's probably 99% of the time phenomenal. But I don't just take it at face value. I go and I read the post. And
I read everything.
I read it before I tweet it. And so once I have the content that I want to send out, then I use Social Oomph that's my preferred scheduling application. It has a lot of features and metrics, and I really like it. And so then I schedule for Twitter and LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, I always post live on LinkedIn in the mornings, and when I have a new blog post, I add it to LinkedIn, to the publishing segment, and then I schedule my afternoon LinkedIn, and I schedule all of my tweets, except for the images. I always do those live. And then for my Facebook posts, I always use Facebook's scheduling feature in the status update box.
Right.
And I always post live to Google+, because you can't post to Google+ from Social Oomph. And I always pin live. But anyway, so I get my content, and then I line up my tweets. I line up my LinkedIn posts for the afternoon, and I post live to the other places. And that's all using Social Oomph.
That's very similar to that. Social Oomph, is that a paid service, or?
I think they have a free service. You can do 3 tweets a day.
Yeah, I have
the paid service. I think it's, I don't know, 30-something a month, because I can have an unlimited number of accounts, which I need for my clients.
Right. Yeah, I haven't checked that platform out. I've been using Hootsuite, and I put so much time into learning how to use it right that I've been sticking with that.
Yeah, I always set my clients up on Hootsuite.
There was something you mentioned. Let me think about that a second. That I thought was very interesting. Oh, that the difference between live tweeting and setting up your accounts. Because you set up your accounts and you schedule certain things to broadcast at certain times a day, does not mean that that's all you do. I have everything set up to where it goes to my phone. So as I'm working on my client work during the day and doing different things, all my, new followers, mentions, yada, 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 go to my phone. So I can pick it up during the day and check it like when I have lunch or whenever I have time. And I can check it and run through there real quick and see what I need to address or whatever right from my phone instead of having to go into the tabs. You know what I'm saying? Pull yourself out of your work and lose whatever momentum you had built up during the day. I find that a quick, easy way to do it. The other thing is, too, because I'm older and I don't see as well as I used to, I don't stay on there as long. So I do what I need to do on there, and then I get off the phone because I don't like reading on the phone. So
Right.
it helps me manage my time a little bit.
Yeah.
But you do have to find some type of method during the day, not constantly, but check in at lunchtime, check in after dinner or whatever to kind of give everybody the feel that you're always available. Does that? I think that's kind of what.
Right. I always check in later afternoon. So I'll go to Twitter and I'll see who's retweeted me. If anybody's asked a question I need to answer, and that's when I send out my thank yous and respond to questions. I go to Facebook. I go to my home tabs and look at what people are posting, like posts, leave comments, share maybe something, etc. So in the morning, I'm more focused on content curation and scheduling. And then in the afternoons, I'm focused on socializing. And that's how I divide it for myself.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Pamela Barway was asking you particularly, are there any content aggregators, free or paid, specific to LinkedIn contacts and content that you could recommend?
I don't. I know that LinkedIn had a lot of apps, and they don't have as many anymore.
I know that through Hootsuite, you could set it up to where you can get your feed right in Hootsuite, and it is kind of
right.
because it does it in a smaller area, it fits more at a time, so it is quicker to go through, I found. But that would be my suggestion. That's the only thing, honestly, that I have really seen that kind of works with at LinkedIn, and I could be wrong. So if anybody knows anything different, please don't hesitate to put it in the comment feed, because I would be interested in having an answer to that myself.
Social Oomph has a feature they call the cockpit, and that's where all your feeds come in. And you can just go to your cockpit and see everything from Twitter and Facebook, if you link Facebook up to Social Oomph and and LinkedIn. So they have a feature.
I don't think a lot of people realize that things like Hootsuite and Social Oomph, that you can set your RSS feeds right up inside there. So you can do everything all at once. And it's not difficult to do at all. Now, I do use Feedly too, and the main reason I use that is because it's visually, it was very easy to set up and to find the feeds to put them in there. It is a little bit harder in Hootsuite because you kind of have to go look for them yourself and pull them in. Either way will work. I've tried both, and I still have my RSS feed for some things that I do. And another thing you mentioned about reading, I read everything that I put up with my client's name or my name on it. And that, to me, that is extremely necessary, because I only want to provide value to my clients, and I only want to provide value from my clients to their audience. And if I'm putting up a bunch of crap, I'm not doing my job. And if I'm doing that for my business, I'm not doing my job, because I'm not getting the message out that I need to get. That's really important. Take the time to read what you're putting up, and if it means that it takes you a little longer, then put up less, but make sure that you really vet everything that you put up. You don't want it, and especially if it has a click-through, you don't want somebody to think that you're giving them something of value and they click on it and it goes to somewhere that does not have the content that's promised, that maybe could give them a virus or something. You have to be careful. Take time. Take time to make sure that you're putting up really good content.
Absolutely. The other thing I want to say about Hootsuite is that it also aggregates your Instagram account. And so you can't post to Instagram from Hootsuite, but you can see you can see your newsfeed.
Yeah, they're getting better and better, and I work with my daughter, and what I like about Hootsuite too, and you probably do it with Social Oomph, is she's a manager on there, so she can work with me on things. And like I said, that's one of the reasons I went through and did the paid version. Is you know, when you're using it a lot for a lot of different things, it's better just to go ahead and bite the bullet, which is not much of a bullet. I think it's $10 a month I think I pay for that, which is a steal. For as much time as it saves me, it's a steal.
Yeah.
Now, as you're starting out and you're setting up your system in the morning, would you suggest, and I've heard two schools of thought on this, and I'll tell you my opinion after I hear yours. How many social media channels would you suggest, and we're going to go say specifically, a writer use each day?
That depends. I always tell people to start with one, because you want to be, because you can be easily overwhelmed. So you want to start with one and stick with it until you feel completely comfortable with it before you add a second. And I think the number of social media networks you're on depends on your genre. I think that someone who writes romance would do really well on Facebook and would do well on Pinterest, and I think on Twitter also. I think someone who writes nonfiction, would need to be on Google Plus and definitely Twitter and LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
What I say about Facebook pages now is that Facebook pages are difficult because whereas 6 years ago, most of your posts ended up in your fans' news feeds. As of a few months ago, only 6% of your posts from your Facebook page end up in your fans' news feeds. And I think this is happening because Facebook is moving towards monetization. They want to monetize Facebook. And so what you need to do every month is have a budget for advertising. And so to advertise, in order to get your posts into your fans' news feeds, and if you're unwilling to really set an advertising budget, it doesn't have to be a lot of money. It can be $50 a month. I think it's going to be hard to have a Facebook page unless you're a romance writer. I think romance writers probably don't have that problem. But again, it all depends on what your niche is. And so if you're mostly a photographer and you're going to publish a book of your photographs with some text, you need to be on Instagram. If you're writing for the YA market, you need to be on Tumblr and Twitter. So I think the number of social media networks depends on your genre. Of course, if you want good SEO, it's always great to be on Google+.
Right.
But I would say don't overwhelm yourself. Well, I don't know.
And I think that's the thing. I think you're definitely right. And that's why, like I said, I was going to give my opinion. I would normally say for most people, 2 is good. You're good with 2. And then, like we were talking earlier, then you might have something you play on. That's your own personal thing. But a 2 seems to be a good number. It's not too heavy. But the thing is whatever you use, take the time to learn it well. So it's not going to do you any good to just arbitrarily, without a plan, throw up social media any time of the day and not have a system. If you really want to build your platform, if you really want to build your presence and get your brand, which is you, the author, your word out there, sit down an hour a day with a plan, know exactly what kind of post you're looking for, what you plan on posting, and where you plan on posting it to. Because without that plan, you're just going to be too scattered and you're not going to get the value out of it that you need. And the other thing, like you had mentioned to me earlier, Frances, is do the analytics. Look at what you're doing. Check your follower growth. Check what posts are working, what aren't. Really pay attention to the black and white and the numbers of what you're doing so you can see what works, and you're going to end up becoming a lot more effective. You're not going to waste your time on the things that aren't working for you, and you're going to end up spending more time on the things that are, and it's just going to make it much easier for you in the long run.
Right, and you don't have to spend a lot of money on on the metrics. Facebook pages have a wonderful analytics program called Insights. It will tell you what time your fans are on Facebook, what's the best time to post your information, where your fans are from. I mean, demographics are broken down by language, by gender, by geographics. So you have a lot of good information there. Twitter has analytics that are free. You have a business account on Pinterest, you get a free analytics program. I also subscribe to 2 programs. One is called Sprout Social, and the other one is called Social Report. And Social Report will track everything. It will track your Google Analytics. It will track your MailChimp, your LinkedIn, your Pinterest, your Twitter, your Facebook, your Tumblr. I mean, it's just a huge, long row of social media networks that it will track for you. And Sprout Social provides wonderful demographics. And so you really get to know who your followers are. Like, although I think of myself as, especially with my first book, as writing for the 45 and above demographic, my following is really in the 35 to 45 age range. And that's why Twitter is so important for me. They're mostly on Twitter and not as much on Facebook. Well, they're on Facebook, but my demographic tends to be more on Twitter.
Well, see, that's what my issue is too. I have a Facebook account. I'm not going to say I don't, but I don't use it very often. And the reason, I mean, I have things that post automatically to it. But the reason is because in the area that I live, this is a social media desert. So there are very few businesses that use Facebook. And most of the businesses that I do have as clients that I've gotten off clients did not come from Facebook. So it wasn't earning me any money. Where Google Plus, Twitter, things like that actually help develop my business and get me business. So there's a return to it. That's why I don't use Facebook. But and also too, what you were saying about how Facebook is dealing with your posts now.
Right.
It's just not as effective as it used to be. You know, years ago when I was doing nightclubs, I used Facebook was the tool that I used because that's what my customers use. That's what their friends use. So any specials that I had or events that I had, that's how I communicated with them. But that's not true of my business today. So you're right. You really have to think through what your goals are and have a purpose and decide on what social media you're going to use to meet those needs. Yeah, absolutely.
You need to be clear on who your demographic is. So if you're a romance writer, definitely have fun on Facebook. If you're writing for YA, definitely be on Tumblr.
I'm a plan person. I have plans and process maps for everything, and it drives my daughter crazy. But that's how I stay organized. I know a lot of people are not plan persons, but plan people. But if you sit down and do a marketing plan and decide, you know, some type of benchmarks of how you want to grow on social media and what you're trying to accomplish, sometimes even if you don't look back at it, just having that information in a clear manner in your head and knowing where you're going to go is really helpful. So that, to me, that's the first step I tell people when they say, okay, I need to get started on social media. I say, well, then you need a plan. Decide what you want to do, what your goals are, and kind of how you're going to do it. And then you can start working on your daily processes. So do you do a marketing plan for each of your books, or do you just have an overall plan that you work with?
I have an overall plan that I work with, I would say. Yeah. I mean, I do press releases or certain media that I contact. I always do a blog tour. I offer my book for a discount on certain days. So I think I do pretty much what a lot of authors do in that sense.
Right. Yeah. See, that's kind of how I had it thinking in my head, because I mean that plan's going to change all the time depending on what you're doing. If you're launching a new book or launching a product, or on news cycles, like I do social media for a guy running for Congress, and when there's a news cycle that he needs to respond to, you have to jump in there, and that can kind of throw a loop, a mess into your other things, but you have to be ready for it and take care of it. Now, a lot of people don't have that kind of, immediate need that they have to deal with like that, but yeah, you have to have, but if you have that plan, you have somewhere where you can jump off from,
Yeah. Social media requires some openness to vulnerability and also curiosity. So, for example, I have a client, and she just feels very vulnerable about the openness of social media. So she doesn't grow her following. She just puts her messaging out. It's mostly retweeting other people's content and some of hers, but she doesn't like growing because it makes her feel vulnerable. And then in terms of curiosity, you need to be able to keep wanting to learn more. The other issue is on Twitter, because you were just, what made me think of this is that you were just talking about your client who has to watch the news cycle and jump on some issues. Well, the same thing can happen on Twitter. If you go to your home tab and you look on the bottom left column, it will say which issues are trending. And it's important to watch the issues that are trending, because you can capitalize on those issues and expand your audience. For example, one day picture books was the top trending issue, and I have clients who write picture books. And so I was able to jump on that particular hashtag instead of kidlit, and then help them expand their audience. So you want to be aware of trends in social media. What issues are trending, and how do they relate to your niche? Because it's just a way to capitalize on an issue and expand your readership.
And hashtags too. I mean, find like 10 hashtags that have to do with your business and follow those. I don't have that many on my account, but I have several hashtags that automatically propagate from Twitter into my Hootsuite in a column so that I can follow those hashtags. So if things come up that, like I said, that are timely or something I need to pay attention to. I tell you, this is real interesting, and I don't know if you've used this tool. Jason Frasca and Mike Alton told me about this. It's if then that. So.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that is the neatest thing. It takes things. I'm trying to think of it. Oh well, here's a really good one. I have anything that's being voted on the Senate floor is automatically sent to me in my email for that day as it's happening. And the same with the House of Representatives. Any bills that are introduced, I have sent to me automatically. And all it is a little app that I just say, okay, I just tell it to connect these two things, and it connects it and automatically emails me that information. And there are hundreds and hundreds of things that it can do. So like when I put up a blog post, it automatically goes into a file in my Evernote. I mean, I've got a lot of things that do that. You can have it turn the lights on in your house. If it's going to be over 95 degrees, it can alert you. I mean, there's so many things. That is the neatest tool that I could get lost in. I have to be careful with it. But,
yeah.
But all those other things help.
There's another tool like that called Content Gems. And you can tell Content Gems that whatever your keyword is that you want to track. And as soon as there is an article, a blog post, something that happens with that covers that keyword, you get an email sent to you.
Oh, that's wonderful. We're going to have such an enormous amount of resources that by the end of this show that I think are really, really going to help people. That's awesome. I'm going to have to check that out.
And then there are some applications that I use that help me in terms of being more social on social media. And one that I love, and I learned about it early on, and I've used it ever since, is called Nutshell Mail. I don't know if you've used that one. It's great. So I time it so that I get it twice a day. And I link my Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter accounts to it. And so twice a day, I get messages about who followed me, who unfollowed me on Twitter, whose birthday it is on Facebook. People that I most often communicate with, they will tell me, Michelle Mail will tell me what their trending posts and tweets.
Oh, that is really helpful.
It's phenomenal. And then I have another application called Newsly, and it sends me an email whenever anyone of influence in my tribes has a trending post that is gaining traction on social media. Wow. So it's just, those are free apps, and you just sign up for them, tell them what your keywords are, and then wait for the emails to come.
See, there's so many things out there. It's just kind of wading through and finding what's really effective and, what works best for you. But those both sound like really, I'm going to check those out. Those both sound really interesting. Because I'm always on the lookout for anything that'll save me a minute or make something easier for me. Because, when you do this for a living, it can get pretty heavy as far as what, all the little things you have to take care of. I wanted to mention, too, that something I found that was very, very helpful to me, particularly with blog posts. Mike Alton, and I will put the link in the blog post for this, and also put in the comment feed, did a post quite a while back on what he does after he writes his blog posts. So it's a checklist of everywhere that he shares it to. And I used his as a basic, and I took some basis, and I took some of his out, and I added some of my own. But I have a checklist that I go through. So it does by doing that, it does a few things for me. One, it makes sure that I share my content to all the places I intended to. And two, it keeps me on task. So if I get interrupted and I'm in the middle of sharing my blog post, I can go back and know where I shared to and what I needed to do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that is a really, really helpful tool that I have found. That if you're gonna go to the time to write the blog post, make sure you're getting it out in the places that you would like to get it out to and the way you want to, and that's been real effective for me.
That's great.
Yeah, that's just like I said. I have plans and processes for everything.
That's wonderful.
So, yeah, well, I don't know everything, but it is helpful, and particularly having brought my daughter in to help me out, I had everything in black and white and said, okay, this is what you need to do, instead of having to spend all that time trying to train somebody in something that really, it's so organic and intuitive. I think that it's hard to train somebody to do social media like in a few sessions. I think it really is something you have to figure out kind of what works best for what you're trying to do. I mean, that's just my thought. We are just about done here, so I just wanted to if you would like to tell us some more about your books, how we can reach you. I did put up the new showcase cards that Google now offers in the Hangout. This show also is turned into podcast, so you wouldn't be able to see that on the podcast, but in the on my website you could definitely find all the information that we've talked about today, including your books, and I'll also add your books to my resources book page on my website, so they'll be there too. But if you could tell us what you have coming up, what you're doing, how people can get a hold of you, and do you have? I wanted to ask you myself, do you have a newsletter? I think I signed up for your newsletter that comes out once a week, right?
I have a newsletter that comes out about once a month.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. I don't inundate people with it, but with the free newsletter, you get a copy of the ebook Pinterest Just for Writers, and that's on the homepage of my website. So you can contact me at socialmediajustforwriters.com. There's a contact page. Just send me an email, or you can contact me on Twitter at Caballo Francis, my last name first. On LinkedIn at Francis Caballo. Of course, on Facebook, I have a profile and a page, Social Media Just for Writers. So,
and on Google Plus,
I'm Francis Caballo, and on Pinterest, I'm F Caballo.
Okay.
So
cool.
I'm everywhere. And on Tumblr, I'm Francis Caballo.
I have not used. I have a Tumblr account. I've never used it. I'm so bad about that. But I just couldn't. That would have sent me, I think, over the mental edge of what I'm doing. I think that would have just been the end for me. That would.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a Tumblr account. I don't update it fairly often enough. I manage my clients' Tumblr accounts, so I know how to use it. I just, I'm very active on 5 social media networks, and I'm on an additional 3. So I'm on 8 social media networks.
See, I don't have anybody using Tumblr, so but there would definitely be a learning curve for me if I came across somebody I needed to use it for. I'd have to come up to speed very, very quickly.
It's pretty easy.
Yeah,
it's pretty easy.
It's interesting. I'm going to do, like I said, this is part of a series, and I'm going to do shows on different social medias channels. The next week's show is going to be on Google+, how best to use that as a writer and be effective on that space. And I'm going to include Tumblr. I didn't have it on my list. I'm going to include it in my list, so that's going to force me to have to learn something about it. But when I get further back into it, where I kind of lump them into a group, I'm going to add that. So I'll definitely have to do that. Well, I want to thank you very much for joining us on this week's episode of The Writing Biz. You've been a great guest. You gave us so much information, Frances. I really, really sincerely appreciate it, as I'm sure my audience will. I want to remind everybody that you can find past episodes at thewritingbiz.com. And besides all the episodes, you can also find podcasts on Stitcher Radio and iTunes. There's links to that on the website. And that's under The Writing Biz, so it's not a different name or anything. It's easy to find. Next week, we're going to talk about Google+, and not only as a social sharing site, but how you can use it as a blogging platform and a video creation tool. So there's several different ways that you can use Google+ to get your message out there and to help build your relationship in social media. On that note, Frances, again, thank you so much, and really enjoyed having you. Yeah, and I want to thank everybody, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.